The Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is a surprising week number 13. I cannot believe we're 13 weeks into the year. We are barreling to Rivalry week, but that's still a week away. I'm joined by my co-host, the man that was a balloon salesman until inflation hits, my co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing?
Hey, Helio, man. It's big time. I'm doing fantastic. We have a big weekend. College football playoff just released their rankings, and we got a few more to go. I think we expected kind of them just to stay with the course on the rankings coming out. But you know what? This weekend, next weekend, championship game weekend, those are going to tell the true stories, and the committee's got to make decisions at that point. We're going to know about Ohio State and Indiana this week. We're going to know about Notre Dame if they're still alive. We're going to know about how the Big 12 sort of plays out the rest of the way. It's going to be an interesting story to tell, and it all sort of it's going to shake itself out over time. We've had this before where we all complain and yell about rankings and why teams are there and who's propping who up. But the play on the field is obviously what the committee's looking at. They're looking at play on the field and losses. And if you have 0, 1, or 2, not how strong your schedule's been, not who you lost to or who you beat. It's just win the games on the field. And one thing is funny, losses and wins mean something different for everybody else. According to the committee, and literally they said on the broadcast this evening, the Michigan's game versus Indiana was a good win for Indiana, but it was not a good win for Texas. And then the same thing with Arkansas. Arkansas, it was a good win for Texas, but it was a bad loss for Tennessee. So they're kind of setting, like, depending on who the game was and who it is, the standard is different. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if you better win and take care of business, because if you leave out the committee on Sunday, December 8th, you might be in trouble and complain at the very end. Do not leave this in the committee's hands going forward. Take care of business, because they're viewing every win and loss against its common opponents completely different.
Right. And one of the things that we were talking a little bit off the air here, Fresh, to kind of clue people in, guys, don't be prisoners of a moment. Don't sit there and look at a single game just because that team didn't perform up to your expectations. You know, they may have been dominant all year. And the great analogy that I heard and kind of gave it to Fresh here a little bit as well, is kind of like a starting baseball pitcher. And take, for an example, a man like Tim Wakefield, who had, when that knuckleball was dancing, you couldn't hit it. It was impossible, and he would have, 15 or 13 Ks in a game. But then you'd see him have an outing where he would just lose all control of the knuckle, and that knuckleball would really flatten out, and he gets shelled. And people be like, oh, well, what is? Well, sometimes you lose a mile or two off your fastball. Your curveball isn't going from 12 to 6 anymore. You got to be aware that in college football, we're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, a couple kids 21, 22, and Ryan Williams is 17 if you haven't heard yet. You got to remember, these kids aren't professional. They still have classes that they do online or responsibilities. They still have, the trappings of the college world around them. And you're not going to get the same team playing football each and every week. So again, when you sit there and go, well, and a great example would be Oregon last week. We've seen Oregon just look like ridiculously good. People go, well, they almost got clipped by Wisconsin. Yeah, Oregon's having to travel across 2 time zones, playing Madison, to a team that is fighting for everything. Yeah, Wisconsin's season is not where we thought they would be, not where they thought it would be, and they're going to do everything in their power to play spoiler. So you guys got to be careful, especially with those teams, and then don't get lost in the moment and go put your whole season on a single game.
Yeah, and you kind of look at the committee and they're putting the rankings out. You can sort of see the structure of the Big 12 having all 3 of them below Boise State right now. We're all going to jump to conclusions and say, oh, Boise State, well, now they're going to be one of the top 4 highest ranked, champions. Well, no, because Arizona State, BYU are going to be playing this week. One of them's going to have a ranked win. And then most likely they're going to play Colorado. So you're going to have a ranked win there, which Boise State will not be able to make up. So Boise State right now on November, 18th, 19th, where we're doing this record, just because they are the technically fourth highest ranked conference champion, allegedly projected, that's not going to last because they're not going to be able to make that ground up down the road. And talk about propping up with ranked wins. Illinois and Missouri have no business being in the top 25. We know that. They know that. The committee putting them there, in my opinion, is egregious, and it's only truly propping up Penn State because that's Penn State's really only ranked win, and prop Missouri there to prop up Alabama and to prop up Texas A&M and give them another ranked victory. Those teams have been abysmal when they face any kind of stiff competition whatsoever. They have no business being there, but the committee's doing it for some sort of political reason and not because what actually has truly happened on the field. Syracuse is a much better 7-3 team. Pitt is a better 7-3 team. And I'll even say Kansas State is a better 7-3 team. And none of those programs are in the top 25. So the rankings right now, I think they're really pulling them from a hat. And it's going to create problems come December 8th when they might throw some random situations out there and really throw everyone for a loop.
Fresh, here's the thing I still don't understand. We'll get to our preview games here in 1 second moment. Why is SMU sitting at 13? Why is the play? I out of everything, I feel like for some reason SMU is being held to a different standard than some of these other teams. They have played a decent schedule. Is it the best schedule in the country? No. Is it Texas, Indiana, that level of schedule? No. Why do you feel like the committee isn't moving them up?
I think they started low, and that's why they don't want to move them high. And I hate to say this, that BYU loss and BYU having so many close single-digit games, they finally like, all right, look, did they really beat a good team? That's what they're kind of like trying to, they validated that. They really didn't beat a good team. They just beat them early in the season. And it's setting up for another nuclear option because, look, we already said there's going to be chaos in the Big 12, and whoever wins that league can get that one bid. Now, if Miami being higher ranked, which, I mean, the fact that they're whatever, we'll deal with that down the road at some point. But if Miami wins the ACC, that's what they want. Is that all right? It's what's supposed to happen. It is what it is. They're the ranked team. They get one of the 4 spots.
Right
now, where they're ranked right now, ahead of Ole Miss and ahead of Georgia, which I'm telling you right now, Georgia and Ole Miss will beat Miami on the field. If SMU wins the ACC, how far is Miami going to drop?
Right.
Are they going to drop them 2 spots and still keep them in the top in the 12 playoff field? Then that bumps out somebody else. If they drop them farther enough out, then really that proves that the Miami schedule was a joke and they were just ranking them high, and they tumbled them down 4 or 5 spots. Because we've seen teams who lost, like Georgia lost, they dropped 6, 7 spots. When they lost to Ole Miss. If SMU beats Miami by 2 touchdowns, then yeah, that should be a 6-point drop. But the committee has not shown consistency from that perspective. And that's why I think the Indiana-Ohio State game this weekend will give us a good idea of where are they hoping that teams like that lose? Are they hoping Texas loses and hoping Indiana loses down the stretch? Are they truly valuing those wins and losses? I think Georgia beating at 10 shows they have no faith in Texas. They're just putting them at 3 because they have 1 loss in the SEC. If Georgia's not getting credit for that win and being higher up in the rankings by being the number 3 team on the road at the time, number 1 by 2 touchdowns, that shows they have no faith in Texas. And then Indiana being there, I think they're kind of expecting, well, we have them there now. We'll give Ohio State a nice little boost, and we're going to drop Indiana at some point. But how far do they drop them? They drop them 2 spots. If they get beat by 20 or they get beat by 14, is India going to go down 4? India got to go down 7? It's only 1 loss. Or are they going to be completely taken to the top 12? The committee will be judged by that decision next Sunday or next Tuesday.
I still, going back to the SMU thing, Fresh, I just for some reason get this feeling that there are people that are still in the committee room who want to keep SMU out of the playoff. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of what happened in the 80s with the death penalty and there's the part of me that goes, is there someone in the back pulling the strings or saying, the first time we have a 12-team playoff, a team like SMU that we gave the death penalty has got a shot to get in this thing. I don't think SMU is going to win a national title, but when I'm, again, going to the eye test, watching them play, I could make a solid argument that SMU is one of the best 12 teams in the country. Now, are they probably in that 9 to 12 range? Yeah, that's where they're going to fall. I'm not going to say they should be hosting a home playoff game. They're going
Unless
on the road.
They win the conference, they're going on the road.
But I do feel that they are one of the best 12 teams in the country. But we digress a little bit. We could spend a whole show just breaking down this. Let's get to the previews of this week game, some of the games here. Let's go out to the Big 12 where we're talking another team that really the movement, I expected them to move maybe a little bit more after this past weekend. The Colorado Buffaloes and everything that's going on with Coach Prime, they're traveling to the Jayhawks, Lawrence, Kansas. Right now, at time of recording, Colorado is only a 2.5 point favorite in this game. Over under is set at 59.5. We saw what Kansas can do. I think this is where we need to be careful on criticizing Kansas so bad. We knew that there's talent on Kansas's football team. Now maybe the book is out on them. Maybe they are very similar to an Iowa State that when you put expectations on them, they kind of falter a little bit.
Tighten up a little bit.
Right. But they're a solid football team. They're 4-6 on the year, which is a little bit disappointing in my eyes. But Colorado comes in, and I think that 2.5 number is way low because I think Colorado is motivated to put up points. Sanders has got a shot at the Heisman. Hunter's got a shot at the Heisman. We're looking at Travis Hunter coming in on the 1,000-yard mark here, Fresh. I know that we both probably feel that Colorado is going to win this football game. So what does Colorado need to do in this game specifically to impress the committee in your eyes?
Well, I think first off, this is going to show maturity from that entire Buffalo's football program. Last year they were 4-8. They got to a great start, and then the bottom fell out. They did a lot of growing pains. They struggled. Literally everybody made fun of them for how bad they played in the opener versus North Dakota State. They weren't physical enough. They hadn't solved the problem. They went and they got whooped up by Nebraska early in September, and then something along the way, it all clicked. The team grew up. They found offensive and defensive linemen. The receivers started catching the ball consistently. They were able to run the ball. Shador's making plays. Hunter's been obviously a lockdown, but the whole defense as a whole played so much better. This is where you need to maintain tunnel vision. Focus on the bigger picture and being disciplined and mature to win big football games when you're now expected to win. Everything is there. Everything is lined up. Yes, people have hated on your program. Use that as motivation all you want. We kind of thought you guys were a little bit suspect early on, and you've now grown. I've admitted it. You've grown to impress me. You've grown up across the board. Right. And now this is a point of you've gotten to a point where now we truly respect and see your growth. Now you have to actually win when you're expected to win and win big games. Looking at this football game here, Kansas, they're playing for bowl eligibility. We thought they would be obviously much higher up in playing for a Big 12 title. Now they have a chance to be spoilers and really ruin your season and get to a bowl game at the same time. This team is a motivated football team. Daniels at quarterback, Neal at running back, Grimm, Skinner, Arnold at receiver. They need to score a lot of points in this ball game. Their defense has had some ups and downs all year. They obviously have had some close calls. They weren't able to finish the drill and finish the game. But this team was talented all the way. The defense, Kobe Bryant and Melo Dotson at corner, they've combined for 9 picks. They're going to have to show up on the perimeter and try what they can do to take at least away one of them. Now, with so many receivers out there, they usually put out 3 to 4 every time for Colorado to spread the ball around. You're not going to have that man coverage as much, but the two of them have got to be impact players to let that defense really thrive and get home on the quarterback and sort of contain Shador and Travis Hunter, Shepard. The list goes on for that attack. If they can show up and cut the perimeter and really help limit the pass game, it will give them an impact defensively to sort of contain Colorado. And then offensively, if they're scoring points, make this a shootout ball game. Kansas being 4-6, 5 of their losses by single digits. 4 of them have been 4 points or less. The last 3 games, lost 29-27 at Kansas State, and they had that ball game wrapped up and ready to go in Manhattan with about a minute to go. And they don't beat the Wildcats very often. They kind of choked that one away late. They beat Iowa State, and they've beaten BYU, two ranked teams. This is their fourth ranked opponent in a row. This team has been through it. They've shown they're battle tested. They also played UNLV earlier in the year. They had a loss to Illinois early in the year. Ups and downs. They played they played a pretty solid schedule compared to a lot of other teams who potentially been in the playoff conversation. They played a gauntlet of a schedule, and they've lost a lot of close games. Can they keep it going? Can they find ways to finish it out here? They are definitely talented, and Colorado should not be overlooking them one bit because it's there. It's there for the taking. I think it's going to be a quick start for Kansas. They're going to be showing up. They're going to come into play. They're going to arrive excited and fired up and ready for the moment to accept the challenge. But Colorado, I think, has enough talent down the stretch to finally pull it out to win. But you kind of look statistically, Colorado's allowing 357.7 total yards a game, which is eighth in the Big 12, and they're still allowing 138 yards rushing a game, and they're allowing 22.7 points. If Kansas wants to win this ballgame and slow it down, Daniels and Neal need to run the ball a lot, control the clock, attack that the relative more accessible and weakness point of that defense. If you run the ball, keep Shedeur and Travis Hunter on the sideline. Shedeur being a corner is not going to do stuff in the run. You force them to be physical line of scrimmage. It will allow you to shorten that football game and give maybe a bounce or two late for you to take advantage of. If you get to a shootout and get the running game taken away and you're playing from behind the entire time, I think that's where they really struggle having to throw consistently. This winning streak in these close games the past 3 weeks is because they've had balance offensively. They've been able to run the ball in key situations and be able to keep their defense in solid, depth and not being on the field and being blown away. If they can maintain that, it gives them a chance. On the other side, Kansas is allowing 229 yards passing a game and 24 points. So they have been susceptible to the passing game early and often. If they can get some pass rush with two solid corners I mentioned earlier, maybe make a play or two on Shedeur, it could give them a fighting chance. But I think right now, momentum's on Colorado's side. Kansas is going to give them a fight. This is actually probably one of the better games of the entire weekend. But Colorado, if they can maintain their mature focus, will find a way to prevail and get a win and keep their eyes set on that Big 12 title game and moving forward, potentially toward a playoff bid.
Man, I love our Kansas Jayhawks, and I love them because they're not a traditional football power. And it was a nice little ride for the last couple of years of watching them, overachieve to their level of expectations. But I got to give Colorado some props here, and especially with what Coach Prime has done in year 2 with the Buffaloes. I think the most impressive thing is when Jimmy Horn Jr. went down in late October, and Wester and Shepard have stepped up in his absence, because Travis Hunter is a freak of a college football player. He's amazing, and there's been enough said about the guy about how great he is. But if you didn't have secondary options start to show up, you could have easily, I'm not going to say stop him, but you could have neutralized him within the game of football. Wester and Shepard showing up and being that secondary option for Shedeur has been absolutely phenomenal for them. And that's what's been most impressive. The defense, yeah, they do give up the yards, but they do get after the quarterback. 33 sacks on the year. That pressure is there. I think that could maybe be the difference maker for them. Although Jalen Daniels does not take a lot of sacks, only 9 sacks on the year, has that escapability as well. He's not running the football as much as we saw him run last year right now, Fresh. We take a look at him. He's got, 83 yards or 83 attempts this year. I think last year he only had 27 last year altogether. But again, injury play.
He was banged up a lot last year, yeah.
Banged up a lot. It'll be interesting to see because Jalen Daniels still got another year of eligibility left. It feels like he's been at Kansas forever, but he's had that gray shirt. He's been injured, and he's going to be there. The kid's talented, and this Kansas team, if you don't take them seriously, they could really give you a struggle for it. I think Colorado knows that it has to be on its A game. I think they know that they have to take this game seriously. Give me Colorado and I'll say they'll cover the 2.5. I actually like this game closer to a touchdown. I'd say 6.5 probably is where if I'm making the line on that. But the over-under at 59.5, unless Kansas does exactly what you said and slows the game down by running the football.
I think that's the best strategy. But if this should become a shootout,
over's coming in.
Did not rain. Over's coming in by the end of the quarter.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our next game. This one's kind of a little bit of a shocking surprise to me. The BYU Cougars, they are, like you said, ranked number 14th right now. They're 9-1 on the year, 6-1 in the Big 12. They're heading all the way out to Tempe, Arizona, to place the 21 ranked Arizona Sun Devils, trying to get all that out right there. They're playing in the Big 12, and they are 5-2 in the Big 12, 8-2 on the year. At time of record, Arizona is a 3-point favorite over the Cougars. Over under is 48.5. All right, Fresh. If BYU wins this football game? Well, again, we all know if Arizona State pulls off this upset, I think BYU's out. They're out of the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll still be in the run for the. I think what happens here is if the loser of this game, if Arizona State loses, they're completely done. If BYU loses, I think it solidifies the Big 12 as probably a one-bid league. Just because Arizona State gets 21 out, it's going to take a lot for them to catch up and hop in and even pass potentially Colorado. So there's a lot at stake here. If you didn't also notice, folks, the highest ranked is BYU at 14. That's below Boise State. And if you weren't paying attention, you didn't look at the rankings and you have no idea about the bracket, that puts them as the 5th highest ranked college football conference champion.
Right.
Projected at this point. That means they'd be highest as the 5 seed in the tournament, most likely even a 12 seed. That right there, there's a lot hanging in the balance. We brought up earlier where they'll probably get ranked wins and that will get bumped them back ahead of Boise State, but they're still being the precedent set being outside of that level. So this is a very important football game. Looking at the matchup in general, this was not on my bingo card. Not even my Big 12 bingo card is a big game this season, much less college football playoff implications. So this is a landscape. You do have to give, Sataki and Dellingham, both the head coaches, some serious props for having their programs here and navigating. You can only play the schedule you have. You can't just, this week I'm going to play that team, this week I'm going to play that team.
Right.
You just got to handle your business, and they have both navigated. I think Arizona State's much more a tougher schedule. They both navigated to get where they've had to get. BYU, they've just been winning after last week. Not being always pretty, but W's in the end, no matter what. 4 wins by single digits. The win over SMU looking better and better. And actually, I think right now it's better than them beating Kansas State, even though they beat them by 29 points, because SMU has shown more consistency. But that loss last week, the game before, they should have lost to Utah. They almost blew it versus Baylor. They've had some moments where they were kind of living on the edge. I think the committee has been watching that, and they're kind of waiting for the other shoe to fall. And they were very happy, I think, deep down that BYU lost. Because, look, I'm going to say it right now, folks. The Big 12 and the playoff committee, they kind of want Colorado to go. I think that's why both these teams we're talking about here, Arizona State and BYU, should take offense by that and be fired up to play in this football game and find their way to the Big 12 title game and take it personal. Because nobody wants either of these teams there. It's great stories, but nobody truly wants outside of the fan bases. So you have to get fired up and use that as motivation to come in not only this ball game, but going forward and knowing that it's us against the world mentality the rest of the way. Us against the world. Looking at BYU, Jake Retzlaff, 58.6% completion percentage, 19 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions. He's run for 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's had a great story. Hasn't put up any jaw-dropping Heisman numbers, but he's been very consistent and kind of a little swagger about him to keep the offense moving, keep being the face of the entire football team. I want to see more from running back L.J. Martin. Only 501 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. He's going to have to more down the stretch, and especially more in this football game versus Arizona State. The two offensive playmakers, really, Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter, wide receiver. Roberts, 42 receptions, 659, 4 touchdowns. Lassiter, 38 receptions, 576, and 4 touchdowns. Those are the two straws that serve the drink for the entire offense. Retzlaff's had, some touchdowns, but also had some turnover issues with the 8 interceptions. These receivers have been pretty solid on the perimeter. If they start facing a better defense or solid corners, how are they going to reflect? But right now, They are the guys who are going to get open, get separation, and this is a pass-first football team and allowing that to sort of matriculate and develop. Common opponents, both these programs have beaten Kansas State, UCF, Utah, and Oklahoma State. So that's, if you want to start looking at where they are comparison-wise, both of them have played about the same, half the same opponents. They both have won. They both have done it in different ways, but they've been pretty consistent. Arizona State, obviously, they're in must-win mode because they have 2 losses. They cannot afford one other one. They have to focus on the football game. And just because if they do somehow beat BYU, that doesn't mean their season, locked in and they're set, because Arizona, with McMillan and Fafita at quarterback, it's going to be a rivalry game. They're going to be fired up for it. This is no clean play. They've got to play perfect football the rest of the way. There's no gimmies down the stretch. You've got to stay focused and you've got to remain healthy. We've seen Levitt have some injuries. We've seen Levitt and Scadabo both deal with some injuries throughout the entire season, which is kind of the reason why Arizona State's been up and down. If the 2 of them can be healthy, they're in great shape. But if they aren't, that gives BYU in this game a chance, but also gives Arizona State's hopes much, much less potential. So healthy, grinding forward, staying focused. Arizona State is truly, all like I mentioned, all about Levitt. His 1,900 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 4 picks, 61.3% completion percentage. And then Scadabo, 1,000 yards rushing and 448 yards receiving and 13 total touchdowns. He is the machine for that entire team. It's him as the number 1 option across the board. If he's playing at a high level and healthy, they're in great shape. If he's out, that's the question marks really come into the offense. He's not the only guy, though. Jordan Tyson's been pretty solid receiver, 58 receptions, 833 and 9 touchdowns. And in the red zone, don't forget about the tight end, Mateer, 24 receptions, 228 and 4 touchdowns. He's not going to be the big-time receiver down yards-wise, but in third downs in the red zone, beware the tight end out to play action. Dillingham, the offensive guy, came over from Oregon. He's able to get this team going. These guys can play at a solid level and play fast-paced. It's going to give BYU a problem. BYU hasn't been blowing people out lately. They haven't been scoring a ton of points. They've been playing solid defense. BYU's defense has got to be there and locked in for a full 60 minutes. There's been a lot of turnovers. They've kind of saved and helped save face a little bit. If they can get some stops and force Sam Levitt into some turnovers or some field punts, they're going to be in spots. But if their defense finds a way to sort of fade and lay against a pretty good offense here that we're going to see, they're going to be in trouble. They held Kansas pretty well. Kansas only scored 17 points. This is another game. Can Arizona State's offense find ways to get the ball, down the field, score, convert third downs against a solid BYU team? Being in Tempe, it does help the Sun Devils a lot. But we're not out there in Provo. But are they really ready for the moment? Are they able to, take advantage of the moment and live up? They've beaten some solid teams, but they barely struggled. They beat Texas State by 3 points early in the year. They barely beat Mississippi State football team early in September when they're kind of growing. Which Arizona State football team shows up? They had some big wins. They've shown some solid games, but where can they keep going? This could be a tale of who wants the ball game. Is BYU mad that they've lost, or is BYU's chickens come home to roost and they're just not able to fully fulfill it out in the second half of the year? Arizona State is the bright lights too much for you now. You've been sort of hanging by there in that 26 to 34 range in the top 40 in the country. Now you're in the top 25. You have a chance potentially playing for a Big 12 title. Are you ready for the spotlight? Are you ready for the challenge? Because really now you're expected to win. In the end, I just like Arizona State. I like the swagger they've had in the past couple of weeks. I've sort of seen the projection, the path of BYU kind of fading and Arizona State kind of, peaking at the right time. Give me the Sun Devils forks up, and really making for an exciting, potential Big 12 showdown, potentially with Colorado and Arizona State a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, Fresh, I'm with you on this. I like this Arizona State team a lot in this football game. Again, not reiterating stuff that you said so much in there, but just I think the question's going to come down to, can BYU really neutralize a guy like Tyson in him? Again, people are going to put up Scadabo. Kid's got 1,500 yards of total offense already on the season. But you take a look at what Tyson has done. Jordan Tyson has accounted for over 40% of Levitt's passing yards on the season. You take a look, he's got over half of the touchdowns. This kid is a number 1 option. Is BYU able to shut him down? Are they able to shut him down without opening up major holes for Scadabo in this game? That's what it's going to come down to. How complete of a game can the BYU defense play? Are they able to put Arizona State into third and longs, get a couple of 3-and-outs, get the ball back to their offense? Because what they want to do is they do not want to turn this into a shootout. They don't want to have to play catch up and chase points all game long against the Sun Devils here. If the Sun Devils can jump out to an early lead against the Cougars, then this game is going to be over quick, fast, and in a hurry, man. I tell you, there's a lot of people who are going to say that the Big 12 is going to want, and the playoff committee is going to want Colorado in the playoff. They want to see them there. Folks, watch this game, and a lot of you will understand the reason why most of us would love to see Arizona State in the playoffs as well, especially in warm weather locations. I'm just saying, it's there. It's part of it. And they are one of the 3 largest schools in the entire country with Ohio State and UCF. I like the Sun Devils in this game, Fresh. I really do. And I actually like them more than the 3 points that they're giving right now. I go back to this, 6.5. I like them by a touchdown in this game.
I think it's going to be a 3:30 Eastern time game. The 3:30 slot this week is not exactly the greatest. It would be, I'm actually probably going to be watching more of that game than maybe the Ole Miss Florida game. Cause it's just that entertaining. It's that impactful. It's 2 ranked teams that we've been I think we want to see BYU challenged again. And we also want to see the medal and the merit of Arizona State with the spotlight on them. Who's going to really rise up and get it done.
All right, Fresh. Let's do a quick one here. Let's go to the USC-UCLA game right now. We're choosing this one because it's a rivalry game. Both these teams, their first year in the Big Ten. This is the battle for LA. USC 5-5, 3-5 in the Big Ten. UCLA 4-6, 3-5 in the Big Ten. Right now, time to record, USC is a 4.5-point favorite in this game. Fresh, what do you want to say about this one? I don't know.
Well, first off, I have written here is Buzz's girlfriend.
Woof.
I mean, look, UCLA, I think they've actually overachieved. They lost a lot of talent leaving.
They did.
Chip Kelly going. And you got to give credit to Sean Foster, who has gotten that team to rally together, to develop. There were deficiencies across the board depth-wise, and they have found ways to show up and give people ball games and grow. On the complete other end of the spectrum, USC, good night. You looked great versus LSU, but we're finding maybe LSU ain't that great. Maybe you're kind of like coming back to earth a little bit. Miller Moss obviously been benched. The offense hasn't exploded off like we thought it was. Lincoln Riley dealing with some stuff. The defense has not improved like we all thought they would. DC comes over, brings some guys from UCLA where they were great defensively for a few years, comes over and they've gotten just You need a very controversial play to beat Nebraska. You storm out to a impressive lead on Penn State and then blow it in the second half because Tyler Warren has 1,000 receptions, which you could have fired the entire defensive staff for that alone. And then the other spectrum, you're down 3 touchdowns to Wisconsin, and you storm back and get lucky and find a way to win that ball game in the second half. You choked versus Michigan. Like, there's nothing good to say about USC football right now.
Well, I do have something I could say that's good for them.
I have very little. But if you don't win this football game, if you don't beat your crosstown rival,
you're not beating Notre Dame next week.
You're not going to bowl game. And Lincoln Riley, look at your 3 years. Look at your 3 years on campus in the Coliseum. It's pathetic. It's absolutely terrible. You are stealing money from the state of California and from the University of Southern California.
Yeah.
It is absolutely horrendous what you've done there. For all the recruiting, glitz and glamour nonsense that this entire program was promised, and you come out there, Oklahoma's not very much better off, but damn, it's terrible. You are a one-man show. Caleb, you are banking everything on Caleb Williams. And you know what it reminds me of? Friday Night Lights and Booby Miles. You built everything around one guy, and your entire team failed. The problem is, Billy Bob Thornton in the movie actually was able to get his quarterback and the rest of his team to play at a high level and find a way to go play in the state playoffs and eventually go win state title the year after. You didn't do any of that. you got worse and worse and worse. Something's got to change with USC. I mean, look, it's one of the programs I think everyone in the country loves to hate watch, and we want them to fail. But Lincoln Riley make it much easier to want to fail. Give me something worth watching. Give me something that's actually productive and positive. Because right now, it's laughable. It is laughable and embarrassing.
Right.
The most joy I get actually out of it, and I'm sure it's other fan bases as well, every time early in the recruiting process, we see this kid commit to USC. And either the kids from living in Ohio, the kids living in Georgia, a lot of them recently, or living in Florida, living in Texas, and all the USC fans come chirping on social media, oh gosh, look at that, Lincoln Riley's taking over. What happens come signing day? They flip or they go somewhere else and they all leave the program. You get your little victories in 2 years out in your recruiting process, but when it comes to signing day and when it comes to game day, you're losing. You need to figure something out. You need to figure something quick, or you're just going to come fading back into oblivion like everybody else. In the Big Ten, it's a lot more difficult for you to get going. Even though the Big Ten maybe is a little top heavy, you're not beating Oregon. You're not beating Ohio State. You're not going to beat Penn State. You're not going to beat Michigan. How are you supposed to be a top team in the league when Michigan's down and you lost to them? Penn State is a above average team. I don't think they're number 4 team in the country, but they're above average. You still lost them and you were spotted points. You're terrible. Figure it out. UCLA, you know what? You have nothing to lose in this ball game. I would say go for broke, pull out all the stops, pull out the trick plays, do what you got to do. You have nothing to lose in this ball game, and I would not be shocked when I woke up on Sunday morning if UCLA was the winner.
Yeah, because this game's being played at what 10:30,
late night. I mean, if you're up, good luck. Drink some water, try to hydrate. I think Maeva, who came up from UNLV, gave him a little spark. Early on, he struggled. Gave him a little spark late. Made some throws. Made some moves with his legs. I found he'll get some confidence and get going in the second half, and USC will win the ball game. But it won't be a dominant fashion. It will be, it'll be okay, that's a cute moment. But there's a lot of questions right now for the men of Troy that need to be answered quickly, and it might just become you got to bite the bullet if this continues and tell Lincoln Riley to go find a new job.
Fresh, here's what, if I'm talking to a USC fan, what is a grain of salt? What can you take away from this season? Because this season's been an unmitigated disaster for them. It's just not gone the way that they've wanted. A long time ago, and I can't remember where I ever heard this from.
In a galaxy far, far away?
Far, far away, yeah, absolutely. But someone was talking to me about the NFL and how in a single year, what they look at for an NFL team, whether or not you were successful, was how many of your losses were one-score losses. Like you were within a touchdown of a game. And it shows that your team is being competitive. USC is 2-5 in one-score games this year. All 5 of their losses have been by 8 points or less. That's the one thing, if I'm a USC fan, and again, I'm starting off by saying this is an unmitigated disaster as an unbiased person for it. I have no love or hatred for USC. I don't really care. I'm kind of apathetic towards them. But if I'm trying to talk to a USC fan and I'm saying to them, what can you take away from the season that makes you feel good about yourself and that maybe Lincoln Riley is on the right path? He's got to fix a boatload of holes here in the summer. But you're 2-5 in one-score games. You have not gotten blown out. You do have a big-time win, even though it was at the very beginning of the season, but they don't count them any differently, where it's week 1 or week 10.
No.
But
you beat it'll get counted differently.
Right, but you beat LSU on a neutral field. And LSU is what they are, but most people would consider them in the top half of the SEC right now. UCLA, I'm with you, Fresh. You've overachieved. It's been a phenomenal year for them, for the Bruins. My expectation was this was a 2-3 win football team. Like, seriously, this team was not going anywhere fast. You got Fresno State next week. UCLA is fighting for bowl eligibility. I think that this game is going to determine which LA team goes to a bowl game. because next week I think UCLA will beat Fresno State. I don't think USC is going to beat Notre Dame. It's not going to happen. So which team wins this game, becomes bowl eligible, and is able to at least salvage their season if you're USC? Because you go to a bowl game, it's an extra set of practices. We can close the book on this year, move on to the next, hit the reset button. You get to play them all again next year. And UCLA and say, we're building something over here in Westwood. I'm with you. I think USC wins this game. I would not be shocked, though, if UCLA pulls off the upset.
Yeah. If USC loses to UCLA, at what point does the local media out there in LA start turning up the heat on Lincoln Riley? Who will have the gall to be like, what's going on? Like, start asking some questions, because honeymoon, I think the honeymoon is over, and somebody would have to start making him accountable for some of these failures. I mean, they probably won't, but at some point that conversation, especially if you lose to UCLA, it would start to have to happen.
Right. They're more worried about the Lakers and the Dodgers and all our sunshine fun stuff that goes on out there.
Rams and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Let's go to probably one of the low-key games of the week. I really am excited for this one, and I might kind of shock you in my thoughts here. The Ole Miss Rebels, they're going down to the Swamp in Gainesville. Currently, at time of record, Ole Miss is a 10.5-point favorite. Over-under is set at 55.5. Ole Miss 8-2 on the season, 4-2 in the SEC. The Gators 5-5 on the year, 3-4 in the conference. But don't look now. Florida, Billy Napier. This team is starting to play with a little more energy, and I really think this is a very dangerous game for Ole Miss this week. What say you, Fresh?
Well, Ole Miss 2 weeks ago physically dominated the Georgia Bulldogs in every facet of the football game at home. Everybody in the country was watching. They've been getting their patted on the back for 2 weeks. Where is their mindset at? They've been listening. Have been going look at the press clippings and they take care of business. Are they humbled, or are they just like, man, we're about to go to the playoffs? Like we're guaranteed locked in. We got Mississippi State. We got the Egg Bowl coming up on Friday night, Thanksgiving weekend. We got Florida's 5-5. Like this is a gimme. This is a gimme playoff spot for the Ole Miss Rebels. Is that the mindset of the team? Or it's just a walk in. These two games are, there's no point in really rolling the ball out there. We're just going to give us the dubs and send us to the playoff. If that's their mindset, you're going to get beat because Florida has nothing to lose. They know that Florida's going to beat Florida State. There's no way in the world Florida State's beating Florida. So that's a bowl season for Billy Napier. This is just gravy. This is gravy. Let it out for, Ole Miss. If you come in there and derail and end Ole Miss's season because they're not making it up by beating Mississippi State, that right there might be the signature win for Billy Napier. Yes, he last year beat Josh Heupel in the Swamp, but Florida Tennessee has always been a kind of rivalry. It's finally beating LSU and getting that kind of win, but LSU looks like a dumpster fire. But you got to win, you got momentum. Now you have a chance of getting a top 10 win and knocking your team out of the playoff. This is what recruiting momentum that you already have, because if you look at this past week, momentum for Florida recruiting has actually picked up pretty well. You go out there and you beat Ole Miss,
right?
That right there, Billy Napier's gotten the vote of confidence. You have Lagway playing a little better. Guys showing some vibes. It's in the Swamp. You can really take this to another level and maybe get the program at that point to really get back to some sort of a state of respectability. This is a chance. And it's also a funny kind of way of Billy Napier sticking it to Lane Kiffin, because we've heard the rumors, the desperate pleas from Gator fans that they want Lane Kiffin so bad. They want Lane Kiffin so bad. They want Lane Kiffin so bad. If Lane gets fired from Ole Miss, he's definitely coming to Gainesville. Well, it looks like he's staying, and you obviously have one more year guaranteed for Billy Napier. Billy can basically be like, you know what? Screw you, buddy. I'm going to go out here and win this football game and lock in and show that I am the better coach on the field. This is a kind of an ego thing. Where's Billy Napier's killer instinct? Does he show up and start pulling some tricks out there and trying to, not to show just the recruits, just as current teams at level that they can play high level, the administration, the fans, the boosters, that he is actually the better coach. Right now, this comparison is going to go because if next year Florida stinks and Ole Miss stinks, then yeah, you have a comparable that Lane Kiffin beat Billy Napier. I'm going to hire that guy. But if Billy goes out here and gets this win and ruins that season, his job status, how can you compare and say Lane Kiffin's better than him when on paper Florida had a worse team and Billy Napier still beat him? That right there would be the biggest selling point of all time to save his own job. This is an ego thing from Billy Napier. Doesn't show killer instinct and let the thing loose. Lagway's played much better, even though he's still beat up. He's not 100% healthy. Badgers played well. Ball has played well. DK's played well. They're starting to find some, grooves on defense, even though they're dealing with a lot of issues in the secondary with injuries, which might be detrimental in this football game. They found some of that front seven and play at a high level. The biggest concern we saw with Georgia versus Ole Miss is that Florida offensive line ready to take on, Walter Nolan, Princely, and the entire front seven who has 1,000 sacks, what it feels like. Can they play at a physical level and stop that pass rush? And don't get put in second and third and long and be able to manage the ball game through the ground game and keep those down the distances a little manageable. Yep. That front seven for Ole Miss is going to dictate how this game's going to be. But if Florida can pull out some of the stops, play a little loose, they have nothing to lose, pull out some trick plays, they can keep this thing fun. It's all about the mindset for Ole Miss and what if they're willing to show up and they're willing to play at a high level and not overlook Florida. Because Florida, do I want them to lose? Well, I hate Florida with passion. Y'all know that. But would Florida beating Ole Miss do a lot for Georgia's playoff hopes? Would it do a lot for Tennessee? Would it do a lot for Colorado or BYU or Miami or SMU? It would throw some serious chaos. There are a lot of teams rooting for Florida to win to help everybody else out. This is going to be one of those fun ones where if Ole Miss comes out and gets after early, I think ball game's over. But if Florida can start out early and keep that game close, get to halftime and make them grind it out, you never know how the game's going to play out late. In the end, I think Ole Miss wins. I think they win. I think they win by like 8 or 9. Like that 10.5. I don't think they're going to be as fired up like they were for Georgia.
I'm staying away from that.
I think Florida can maybe keep it around that 9-10 level. Ole Miss will win. I do not think they cover. And it's gonna. Hopefully, the committee watches that football game and actually starts seeing, what kind of effort we're getting from Ole Miss and how they truly evaluate them.
This has all the same setup as last week with Oregon and Wisconsin. Wisconsin, nothing to play for, and their team that's a solid team, but nothing special on paper. I feel the same way about Florida. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though, Fresh. I think this Gators team is going to want this game. I think they're going to want this game more than anything else. Florida came in, you played competitive with Georgia for about 2.5 quarters. You can say maybe 3, but realistically, it's probably better to say 2.5. But you were competitive against Tennessee. 6-point loss in overtime in Knoxville is nothing to shake your head about.
You talk about multiple chances to win that game,
right? You go and get the break speed off of you. You get boat raced by Texas in Austin, and then you come back and you beat a above average, mediocre LSU team. I think Ole Miss is ripe for the taking in this game. I think this may be the game that springboards Florida back into that, in the range that I'm kind of viewing like South Carolina right now. I view South Carolina as a very, very good SEC team. They're not great. They have some flaws. I like that team a lot. And I really have a lot of respect for what they're doing in South Carolina, in Columbia. But what I'm going to tell you here is this. If Florida wins this game, and they're definitely going to beat Florida State the next week, they're going to go to a bowl game, and they're going to get some slappy to play there. All of a sudden, this Florida team is 8-5 on the year. I'm not kidding you. This is a top 25. If they can keep the band together, I know they got some kids that are graduating, they're out of eligibility, but if they can keep the core pieces of this band together next year and they can grow with Billy Napier and continue to improve with Billy Napier, thank God Lagway's knee injury was not as serious as once thought, or the hamstring injury wasn't as serious as we thought with it. This team could be something truly special next year. But if you want people to start thinking that way about you, because here's the thing, people don't view the Florida Gators that way. They don't have that mindset anymore. As much as Florida fans want to think that you do have that mindset, you don't. You've lost that. You haven't been to a college football playoff. You haven't competed for a national title in a very, very long time. I can't remember the last time you went to a New Year's Day 6 bowl game prior to the 14-team playoff. Fresh, you could probably figure it out quicker than I could.
2020.
This Florida team is not have that level of respectability. But step one of that happening is this Saturday in Gainesville. You want that? This is the game you win. This is a dangerous Florida team. I hope Lane Kiffin is taking it seriously. This game screams to me a game that Lane Kiffin screws the pooch and loses. With that being said, Fresh, I'm taking the Gators to win this football game.
I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, if Ole Miss loses, that's 3 losses.
They're out.
And I don't care how great you beat Georgia. You lost to Kentucky at home and you lost to Florida. Those are bad losses. That puts you out. And
lost to LSU.
And he lost to LSU, which is showing to be a rough loss.
Right.
And and this was putting like, is Lane Kiffin actually that great of a coach? Does someone actually want that? Is his perfect spot just in Oxford?
Mm-hmm.
The legacy is all this NIL stuff was to get Ole Miss to the playoff. If you do all that and you beat Georgia and then I'm going to say right now, beating Georgia was the biggest win in Ole Miss football history.
Right.
And if you come off of that 2 weeks later and lose to Florida, who's 5-5, and knock yourself out of the playoff, you are essentially just in purgatory. And but it is what it is.
Right.
Tennessee fans will love you. SMU fans will love it. It will cause some serious eruptions across the college football landscape. But this is a true test on Lane. Can you win the games you're supposed to win when the likes of the Braves?
Make me look like a genius, Billy. I will say this. If Billy Napier pulls off this upset, I will no longer refer to him as Bubble Screen Billy.
Oh, that'll be officially removed forever.
Yep. All right, Fresh. Let's go to another fun one that we're going to have this weekend. This game's at 7 p.m. It is in South Bend, Indiana. The 9-0.
No, it's not.
Where's it at?
Yankee Stadium.
Yankee Stadium. That's right. It's a neutral site game. I have Notre Dame listed on the side of it. The Army Black Knights are going to face off with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Army 9-0 on the year. Notre Dame 9-1 on the year. I feel like Notre Dame's being very, very quiet on this season after the beginning of the year. Notre Dame, 14.5-point favorite, going up against the triple option of the Army Black Knights. Bryson Daly just doing it every which way. But you take a look at what Notre Dame is doing. You take a look what Riley Leonard, 25 touchdowns on the year, man. This kid is balling out for them. Fresh, I'm going to say, like, on paper, I think Notre Dame wins this going away. But, again, the triple option, always tough on people.
This is a time warp. First of all, we're playing Yankee Stadium. But Army, Notre Dame, both being combined one loss in late November. It's like 1947, post-World War II, all the guys are back. Maybe 45 to 54, somewhere in that 9 to 10 year range where it's just They were football powerhouses, both these schools. They ran the ball. The quarterbacks were the leaders, and they were dominant football programs in the country. It's a throwback mentality. It also has serious college football playoff implications. Number one, looking at Army, they're in the AAC title game, and they're playing Tulane. If Boise State stumbles, Tulane Army would potentially be the highest ranked conference champion in that fifth conference.
Mm-hmm.
They somehow get themselves in the playoff. So there's a lot to play for Army's perspective. Notre Dame, if you lose to Army, you're done. I don't care if it's a ranked loss. You've already lost to Northern Illinois. You lose to Army and them, that's 2 losses. Your schedule has already been made terrible because USC and Florida State stink. You can't afford this loss. You've got to just maintain business, stand on business, if you will. Don't have obviously absolute respect for Army and the military academy, but you cannot lose focus of what's at hand because you got this week, then you got USC, and then you got no championship game to play. So you have a good 3 to 4 weeks off before a playoff game, potentially in South Bend. You just need to stay focused and take care of business.
Right.
Do not look ahead. Do not think about, we're in same thing we just talked about with Ole Miss. Don't think it's a lock and you're in the playoff. You still need to be maintaining your due diligence and taking care of what you can take care of and let it all play out. This is not the first time you've had an undefeated military academy play you this season. You faced off Navy a few weeks ago and you absolutely destroyed them. That same ruthless mentality needs to show up in Yankee Stadium on Saturday night. You can't let the moment get too big. We're playing Yankee Stadium. It's nighttime. It's NBC. Everybody's watching. The game will be on. People's eyes will be on the product. You can't let that be, take over what you are supposed to do. Just go out there, run the football, play defense, use your solid depth, and just do what you have to do. You don't have to embarrass Army, but you just need to win the football game and handle your business. Army's going to give you a lot of different looks from the triple option, from some of the pistol option they run. They're going to give you they throw the ball a little bit more than usual. They're going to give you looks. They're going to come after you, and they're going to be disciplined, and they're going to hit you. Coach Monken and that Army program are, for lack of a better term, they're warriors on the field and off the field. They are warriors. They are going to fight you. They're going to make you earn every single possession. They're not going to be a pushover. Yes, they have played like the 112th or 115th schedule in the country. I get it. It is what it is. There's going to be depth concerns when it comes to playing a big program, but they're going to make you earn every potential yard. I know actually the safeties coach for Army, Danny Verpale, been coaching all over the country. He coached at JU when I was here getting his start. He's going to have those boys ready to play. They're going to tackle. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to be in the right alignments. They're going to be focused. You've just got to be more focused and be in line and be ready and not let them sort of just lull you to sleep. You got to execute every single play and be smart and just play it one play at a time through Notre Dame. Both these quarterbacks are truly the storylines in this entire game. You mentioned Riley Leonard and Bryson Daly. Daly, 29-51 for 644 through the air, 7 touchdown passes, 1 interception, 174 carries, 1,000 yards, and 21 rushing touchdowns. He's the leading rusher on the football team. He is obviously the straw that serves his strength. Whether it's with his legs or with his arm, he's going to find ways to lead his troops and be the general on the field. Riley Leonard, 167 for 258, 1,700 yards and change in passing, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and then 104 carries, 641 on the ground, and 13 rushing touchdowns. Both these guys, they are dual threats across the board. They're going to use their legs probably more often than not. I know even for a while this season, Notre Dame fans were kind of getting worried that Riley Leonard wasn't throwing the ball, wasn't throwing for touchdowns. He was just using his legs. So we're starting to see that passing game develop. How consistent can that be down the stretch, not just today, but for USC and the playoff for Notre Dame? You're going to have to be able to throw the football and find some of that balance offensively. So Leonard, keep developing it, keep moving forward. Both the leading receivers for the programs, whether it's Army or Notre Dame, have less than 400 yards receiving. There's not a dominant one-off wide receiver that's taking over. They spread the ball up in chunks. A lot of guys are involved, but both these teams' number one focus is running the football and playing solid defense and getting off the field and forcing turnovers. Notre Dame obviously is going to have a better offensive line. They're going to have a better defensive line. They have talent in the secondary. Watts is an amazing safety. They're going to win this football game, but Army's going to make them work for it through three quarters. That fourth quarter, if Army's in the game in the fourth quarter, I have more questions about Notre Dame than I do Army. I think Army right there will actually vault them, in my opinion, even if they lose higher in the top 25. If Notre Dame is in this game in a fourth quarter fight, that's going to raise some questions about their seeding. They might win, but will they be worthy of hosting a playoff game? That's going to have me sort of questioning. You should have a superior football team depth-wise where you can be able to eventually overcome them. It's going to be fun to see. It's going to be a great spectacle to watch. I think Notre Dame takes care of business. That 14, I think they cover it, but it's going to be a late, like a backdoor cover, late fourth quarter score to get that cover. Army's going to make them fight for it all night long.
Fresh, here's where I think the difference comes into play with Army, and I think you hit it on the head when you talk about the offensive line for Notre Dame having the better offensive line. Army is going to have to be disciplined as all get out, which is like the understatement of the century right there. Talking about the Army and them being disciplined there, the Black Knights. I look at this and I go, Notre Dame has had over 700 rushing yards in the last 3 games alone. That means that they're averaging over 233 rushing yards a game in the last 3 contests. You take a look at what they were able to do against Navy, and I think that's the best comparison for us to use is to take a look at what Notre Dame was able to do against Navy. And I think that what Notre Dame's going to do, they're going to try to jump out to a fast lead. You want to get this game 14-0, 17-0, force Daly to throw the football. That's not his cup of tea. He's done a little bit better, but he's only completing just over 55% of his passes, 56% right now. And his average is only about 12 yards of completion, and he only has 29 completions on the year. I just don't think the Army has the offensive firepower to keep up with Notre Dame in this football game. And I think that Riley Leonard and Jordan Love Jeremiah Love, not Jordan Love, but Jeremiah Love have really just completely breaking teams' backs on this ground attack. I think this is going to be a fast game. This game should be over with how much both these teams are going to want to run the football. This game should be over by 9:30, maybe 9:45. This is going to be a fast game. The clock's going to be moving in this one. But again, what are we going to see from Notre Dame? Are we going to see them being able to get after the quarterback? Are you going to see them getting to the football, not being fooled by the triple option here as well? Because they're going to need to kind of show something. You got USC next weekend. We both like Notre Dame in that football game. Again, it's hard for me to look at Notre Dame and say you're not going to get a playoff spot.
It's tough. I mean, if you lose this ball game, you're done. And if they lose to USC next week, they're done because that Northern Illinois loss eventually got to come for something. If people are watching, it's going to be on NBC. You're going to have eyes on your product. You've got to show up and play well. And any shortcomings of the game, any not looking efficient, people will remember that. The committee's going to remember that. It might not keep you from not making the playoff, but it's definitely going to impact your seeding and potentially take you from that 5 through 8 home game to maybe they're worth a 9 seed. They're going on the road.
Right.
And you have to be efficient and earn your spot. And right now, I think that's the biggest question right now is how do you pass the eye test against a solid football team?
All right, Fresh, let's go to our marquee game of the week. The Indiana Hoosiers, they are 10-0, 7-0 in the Big Ten. They are all the way up to number 5. They're traveling to Columbus. A lot's been made of this game. Ohio State 9-1 on the year, 6-1 in the Big Ten. At time of record, Ohio State is a 13.5-point favorite, and the over/under is set at 51.5. Fresh, we do also have breaking news right now, and this is kind of unfortunate. Starting center for Ohio State they have confirmed he tore his Achilles at practice today. He is out for the year. So again, they lost Josh Simmons on the left side of that offensive line. It's time to reshuffle again the Ohio State offensive line. when you start doing things like that, those things scare me. Those things legitimately scare me for this team as well. When you start messing with the offensive line, granted, it's early in the week. You still got 2, maybe 3 more practices to work together. Hopefully,
Wednesday, Thursday, and a Friday walkthrough. Yeah,
right. But as much as everyone wants to say just next man up, again, that's disrespect. In my mind, that is extremely disrespectful to the guy that just went down with injury, because you're expecting him to play to that same level that McLaughlin has played for. I don't think that that's possible, whether it's Hinsman, whether it's, whoever they move over there into that starting center position. This is a huge loss for the Buckeyes. Huge loss.
Offensive line is something the Buckeyes, they thrive on. They put out NFL linemen left and right. The guys can, be road graders, especially with alignments and having that communication, having a veteran center who's been through it. He was a center at Alabama before he came to Ohio State. He knows what it's like in the playoff, helping Will Howard and also blocking for Judkins and Henderson, keeping the guys organized. A loss right there, communicative, leader on that front line is something for them that it's going to be tough down the stretch, not really having, and how do you replace that going forward? But, I think first things first, this is the biggest football game in Indiana football history, period, end of story. Indiana's not a football power. We obviously know that they're a basketball school, but what Kurt Cignetti and that entire coaching staff have come in, they have got this team in a spot to be in the conversation to make the playoff, and they're undefeated. Yes, they played the 104th schedule in the country. We talked about it earlier. Nobody expected this team to be undefeated coming in.
Right.
They've set the schedule to help develop the program. They take care of business. They did what they had to do. And they haven't just won ball games. They won them all except for the Michigan game by double digits. Now, the best win is Nebraska or Michigan. That's a toss-up, I guess. But I think last week, though, 2 weeks ago, excuse me, the lights started getting a little bright for Indiana. A lot of talk around the program. Game day was there a couple weeks before. And they played a team that had depth in the offensive defensive lines in Michigan. And that game was a slugfest. They were not throwing the ball over the yard like they had been up to that point. It was a 20-15 ball game. Maybe it was a logo game. We also mentioned it. It was the first logo game for Indiana. And logo game, line of scrimmage, we kind of saw maybe they're reading the press clippings, a lot of high the horse. They won the game. You survived. Hopefully, if you're an Indiana fan, that was a teachable moment for the entire team. That's a wake-up call to be on business. Do not think too high of yourself, because the games are only going to get tougher and the expectations are only going to get tougher going forward. They handled it. They won. They moved on. But you've had 2 weeks to prepare. How are you ready now for the horseshoe? Going into the shoe is a daunting environment. Yes, it's a big noon kickoff. We can have a whole conversation about that during the off season. But are you ready for the crowd noise? Because I'm trying to think, going on the road, where did Indiana go that had a daunting road environment this year?
Yeah,
they had Nebraska. They had Nebraska at home. They didn't have to go to Penn State. Didn't have to go to Wisconsin.
None.
This is it. This is that chance. You kind of look at Rourke when he was at Ohio. I can't remember if he was on the Bobcat team, if they even played at, Ohio State. So this is a moment for a lot of these guys and a lot of the team to really don't get so starstruck by dotting the I, the crowd, the noise, the scarlet and gray. If you do, the game's already over and you're going to get run and you're going to get embarrassed. And you know what? I hate to say it, but there might be some committee members who are kind of waiting for this football game to make their true judgment, because you're undefeated. We can't throw you too far down the rankings.
Right.
But your strength schedule's rough. You haven't played anybody. If you go in and get beat by 25, 30 points, I'm not saying you won't be a playoff team, but you're probably 11 seed. And other teams are going to get lifted up. I think people are waiting to sort of see, is Indiana really for real, for real? You can't get lost in the moment and look too big, because if you do, it can be so much for you to catch up on. Right. Now, Ohio State, you played tough versus Oregon. You have a 1-point loss, probably the best loss. It's the best loss in the country. You came in, you were down 10 at Penn State. You came back, you beat them. You did what you had to do. It wasn't pretty, but you found ways to get it done. You were tough enough, especially in the red zone, to take care of Penn State and get it done when you had to. Very, very good win. You played Nebraska. It was a clunker of a game, and I think some people would even say, some of the players would say they were lucky enough to beat the Huskers that day. Here's a chance to make a statement for the committee to lock in, in my opinion, at worst, the fifth seed in the country. And why I mean that is that either you say yourself, you're going to Indianapolis to play Oregon in a rematch. If you lose that, you're the fifth seed. I don't care what anyone else says. If you win that, you're obviously in the top four and probably a 1 seed in the country. If you go in here and make a statement, you lock that in because you're taking care of Indiana, who's undefeated. You got to have a killer instinct moment, Ryan Day, to get after it.
Right.
You've got to do what you did to Mel Tucker and Michigan State back in 2021, where they came in. Ironically, Mel Tucker calling up a contract extension and a bye week, comes in and you have dropped 28 in the first quarter. C.J. Stroud's not, Will Howard and C.J. Stroud aren't the same guys. But that offensive juggernaut mentality of attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking, and giving no quarter, has to be the mindset.
Right.
You've got to be ruthless. You cannot feel cute, like, hey, you know what? We're going to save the Big Ten by letting them be in this ballgame. Because you know what? That's going to happen. More people have questions about you as Ohio State than they are about keeping Indiana as a playoff team. And that's going to probably maybe keep you from having a home playoff game. Like, who knows how the committee's going to rank if you don't come up and show up? Because we all expect all those hosted five-star recruits, that loaded roster, to dominate Indiana. You've got to be ruthless and have no mercy whatsoever. Be Cobra Kai-like and come out there and take care of business. Your defense is solid. Even though there's been some questions in the secondary, Denzel Burke's going to have himself we're going to see how that secondary sort of holds up, especially against Surratt. But you've got to come in here and shut it down and get it done. Do not look ahead to Michigan. Do not look ahead to Michigan. If you get caught looking ahead to Michigan, that's another problem right there in itself. You've got to come in there and attack it. Rourke, Surratt, in your running game, you have talent. Can you show up consistently and not let the lights too bright and make things happen across the board? Ohio State's defense has only allowed one team to score more than 17 points, and that was Oregon, and that was 32 points, and they lost by a point. If you can get to 20 points on Ohio State, that's a big win, and that shows you're compatible and shows you're worthy. The offense has got to find ways to get over that threshold. I know Ohio State fans most good teams, Ohio State fans themselves especially, my gosh, we gave up 16 points. We're not getting out the field on third down. You only given up more than 17 points once, and that was a 1-point loss. Like, their defense is still very, very, very good. Did Jim Knowles dial up some other stuff and guys respond on Saturday afternoon and get the victory? Indiana, where's your defense at? You guys have played really well, but how's your defense be able to handle Jeremiah Smith, Abuka, Tate, the two running backs, Will Howard? Who's going to step up and hold that entire team together? And you're not playing Dylan Raiola this time. This is going to be an interesting test of wills in playoff seeding and how both these destinies and futures for these two programs are sort of laid out the rest of the way. In the end, it's Ohio State. I want to pick in our podcast. I've only picked against Ohio State once, and that was because they're playing the Dogs. Ohio State will win this football game, and Ohio State will cover. This will be a statement game for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. And if it's not, I will have serious questions coming back forth, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think they come out and take care of business in force and really show Indiana as like, all right, you guys done a lot of great. It's been amazing. There's still obviously future development there. Now you know what your bar is set at and where you need to be going forward in terms of being an elite program. But this is going to be a cool day for Ohio State to really supply themselves as that national championship contender to really give themselves that life and that lifeblood.
The only thing that concerns me, Fresh, as an Ohio State fan, the only thing that concerns me is this offensive line being patched together again for the second or third time this season. If Indiana is able to exploit the offensive line, that's where I think the difference maker could be. You take a look at what Nebraska was able to do against Ohio State, and I believe they at one point were holding Judkins and Henderson to like under 2 yards a carry. If you took out like one or two runs there, I think the two of them have benefited more than anyone else with the combination that they have. You take a look at Henderson and Judkins combined, they have 200 carries on the year. They're both averaging over 6 yards a carry. Henderson averaging over 7 yards a carry. These two guys have worked wonderful off of each other. It's showing what happens when you have two elite level running backs as well. Jeremiah Smith is going to be a problem for Indiana. He's a problem for anybody. The kid, I was listening to Mel Kiper the other day, was talking outside of maybe McMillan out of Arizona, who's just a freak of an athlete. Jeremiah Smith would be in the same category of probably Travis Hunter as well, like where they're being drafted. If he was out this year, he would be the number 2 or 3 wide receiver in this year's draft if he was draft eligible. Indiana, for Ohio State to win and stop Indiana, what you need to do is you need to make sure, again, everyone's going to point at Rourke. You got to keep him under 70% completion rating there. You have to stop Ellison and Lawton. You don't stop the run against these guys because they do run the ball well. And these guys, they do have a nice blocking scheme to be able to get some space for both of them and to put them in third and manageable. And then Rourke takes over the game and winds up, pitching and catching it all over the field. Yeah, again, he's never played against a defense like this. He's never played against a pass rush like this. I really think Ohio State should win this game handedly. But the only thing that's stopping me, man, is the McLaughlin injury now. If they had that center, if he was still on this team right now without the torn Achilles, and they're going into week 3 of this new offensive line, I would have been like, all right, they're coming together. Their offensive line takes time to gel. They take time to learn about, and the center is one of the most important things. The guy who's calling out whatever defensive scheme he sees, he's able to call out and change pass protections. Will Howard has been phenomenal this year. I was worried about his completion percentage coming into the season, and all he's done is, I think he's the number 2 or 3 most accurate quarterback in college football this year. I mean,
pretty solid.
He's pretty solid. He's been an impressive get for him. I'm going with the Buckeyes, Fresh. I'm going to say Ohio State, and I'll say they cover the spread. I'm not as confident as you are in that one. Just like I do, that when you have problems on the O-line, things can get bad for you in quick, fast, and in a hurry. That's what I'm concerned about. I think that they have too many skill position players, and hopefully they'll have enough time to get ready for the game against the team up north next week. But I'm hoping that they know what they're doing and that they have a talented kid up that's going to be able to play at half as good as McLaughlin. But I'll wait and see.
I will say this right here, even though I don't think it's going to happen. Doomsday scenario, Ohio State loses. Number one, that's just raising questions about their resume and puts them on that potential bubble because they're not playing for Big Ten title.
Right.
But more, in my opinion, it starts raising questions about Ryan Day. I don't think it's going to happen, but those conversations will start to erupt, and panic will set in Columbus if this is not done, because you've already struggled with Michigan the past 3 years. If you lose at home to Indiana and potentially cost a playoff spot or put the playoff spot in question, you're already going into a game next week. You haven't won in 3 years. The heat that would be on Ryan Day will be insurmountable.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure, and I think the players have got to realize that they have a chance here to, win a Big Ten title and go host a playoff game, or not host a playoff game, but host to be one of the top 4 seeds. Like, there's a lot that there are still in front of them to attain. Can't get cute, can't get cocky. You've got to treat Indiana with respect, or you could be in for a real fight. And I think the Nebraska game was probably the best thing that could have happened to the Buckeyes, playing a tight game versus a team they might not have overlooked a little bit, and they found a way to win. You've got to be able to keep that same mindset any day, any play. And if they don't, I'm sure Buckeye fans don't even want to deal with that thought. But it's one of the things you got to think about now with the playoff, where, who knows how things play out down the stretch.
That's why you coach at Ohio State. Ohio State is one of three, maybe four.
Privilege.
Yeah, it's one of three. You have unlimited resources. You have unlimited donors. You have the best facilities. You have a laundry list of elite NFL players to come out of there. I mean, take a look at Jeremiah Smith. He broke the rookie record held by an NFL Hall of Famer named Chris Carter. I mean, it's part of the job, and I think Ryan Day gets that piece. I'm of the fan base that, I'm not all about like really hurting Ryan Day and on that stuff as well, because I think he's done enough in my mind, with all of the wins that he has, all of the accomplishments that he has along the way. I give him a lot of credit for it. He's made the college football playoff 3 times. He made the championship game once. He's delivered multiple top 5 recruiting classes. I get it. He hasn't beat Michigan, and he hasn't won.
I think the past 3 years, I think he's had the 19 and 20, but the past 3 years, I think is weighing on people's minds because the expectations are so high.
Right. But I'll give him, again, I also try to keep my expectations at a reasonable level. Again, I wouldn't fire him at the end of this year regardless, because I think he's a great coach. But again, I also am going to see what happens if doomsday scenario comes about. We'll see about next year and see what happens. So
yeah, I don't think it will, like I said, but it's one thing that it's weighing on somebody's mind somewhere.
Right. All right, Fresh, let's go to our brown water bets for the week. We got some fun ones for this one. I decided just to go completely out of left field, but I'll let you go first here, Fresh. What's your brown water bet for the week?
Well, first of all, I kind of like the game itself is interesting. I'm calling it a look-ahead game.
Right.
A&M at Auburn. Auburn has a chance to really do some funny stuff and take out A&M or take out Alabama in the next 2 weeks of the upset and really throw, again, another wrench into the playoff. But is Auburn looking ahead to the Iron Bowl and not taking A&M seriously? They're a terrible football team anyway, but are they looking ahead to the bigger rivalry? And is A&M looking ahead to Texas? They think, Auburn's a pushover. They're a terrible football team. Go to the Plains. Hey, Jordan Hare. Jordan Hare is a interesting. It's built on some sort of burial ground. So there's voodoo that happens at a stadium. Got to take it seriously. If they don't, and they overlook Auburn, looking ahead of Texas and potentially getting an SEC title and playing in the playoff, they're going to lose to Auburn, and everything's going to be completely destroyed. So where's the mindset? And even earlier this afternoon, Mike Elko during his press conference literally said, "My team is focused. We're really, really focused on Texas. Auburn." Like his mindset, the Freudian slip to even say Texas over Auburn shows, are they already skipping ahead and not thinking about the Tigers? I still think A&M has enough talent. I think they covered the 2.5 in this game, but Auburn is sneaky at home when they have nothing to play for, and they're going to let it all loose, and they have a chance of being a big time spoiler. So watch that game.
Fresh, I'm going to the wonderful, the fabulous Muncie, Indiana, where our producer's alma mater, the Bowling Green Falcons, I'm going with Maction here, baby, are going and facing Ball State. Fresh, I am taking BGSU as an opportunity to play for the MAC championship, and the Falcons have a chance to win the MAC this year, which is phenomenal there. I'm going BGSU minus 12. I would like to even tease this game and go BGSU minus 12 and the over. The over-under is set at 57.5.
I'm taking the over.
I'm taking the over. Ball State has been in some shootouts lately. They don't play a whole lot of defense there at Ball State, but they can put up some points, and Bowling Green can put up some points if they want to. So give me the over in that game, and I also like Bowling Green at minus 12.
Yeah, Harold Fannin Jr. at tight end for Bowling Green. NFL, he's going to be an NFL player. He is a stud, and he's going to definitely see a lot of targets in the ballgame.
Yeah. All right, folks, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. Make sure you check out SpinnableSports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of SpinnableSports.com. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Hit that notification bell here at YouTube. get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We got Rivalry Week coming out here, so make sure you're interacting with us on the X. Make sure you're checking out Spinnable Sports. Engage with us. Leave us comments down in the bottom there. Tell us if we don't know our butt from a hole in the ground right now. All sorts of fun things. Fresh 1 week away, but this could be a fun one as well. A lot to talk about here.
Yeah, we have Rivalry coming up, but you can't overlook this weekend. A lot of things are at stake. A lot of teams are at stake. Bowl games are still on the line for bowl eligibility. Hey, football is football. Cherish it all. And we'll talk to you next week. Engage with us, SpinnableSports.com, Spinnable Sports YouTube, on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it, Twix. And we'll be there. And with that, we'll talk to you later. Bye, y'all.